Welcome to the Shorten Anime channel. Today we'll dive into the latest episode of The Great Ruler. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to support the channel. The Great Ruler, Season 1, Episode 46. Boom! Surging spiritual energy rushed out like a flood and roared past Mu Chen's limbs. Due to the abundance of spiritual energy, Mu Chen felt a pricking pain in his meridians. It was evident that his meridians had reached the limits of enduring it. At the same time, Mu Chen was clear about the condition of his body. He immediately circulated the Great Pagoda Art in order to drive the dense spiritual energy through the spiritual art circulation route. Waves of spiritual energy were ingested by the Great Pagoda Art and were turned into numerous dark black spiritual energy before it fused into the spiritual energy wheel within his Oricea. Accompanying this influx of dense spiritual energy, the originally pigeon egg-sized spiritual energy wheel slowly grew. The spiritual energy lights flashing on the surface also became brighter. The entire Oricea seemed to have rumbled at this moment. This commotion awakened the Nine Netherworld Bird, who was trapped inside the dark purple mandala flower within his Oricea. It watched this scene with a cold and cruel gaze. Then it suddenly stood up when it witnessed the scene. The burning black flames within his black wings suddenly enshrouded the cage which trapped it. Buzz! However, against the impact, the light barrier cage formed by the mandala flower rippled. It did not show even the slightest signs of shattering. A hint of hatred flashed through the Nine Netherworld Bird's eyes. Right now, it was an excellent chance for it to attack Mu Chen. But this abominable cage had sealed it to the extent that it couldn't even display any means of attacks towards him. Regarding the Nine Netherworld Bird's actions, Mu Chen did not have the time to care about it. He was completely focused on controlling the surging spiritual energy within his body. At this moment, he could not afford even the slightest error. The spiritual energy within his meridians howled endlessly. This high-speed circulation made Mu Chen's meridians ache. This time, there was way too much spiritual energy entering his body. However, it was clearly useless to be thinking about this right now. Therefore, Mu Chen could only concentrate, and he circulated the Great Pagoda Art to the extreme. He ingested the violent spiritual energy constantly. Time quickly passed by, and in the blink of an eye, 2 hours had passed. During this period of time, the spiritual energy wheel within Mu Chen's Oricea had expanded by an entire size. Right now, he had already reached the spiritual rotation stage middle phase, but there was still a considerable amount of spiritual energy surging endlessly within his body. It was time to charge at the spiritual rotation stage late phase. This idea flashed through Mu Chen's mind. He immediately took a deep breath. The surging spiritual energy within his meridians accelerated as it flowed through the Great Pagoda Art circulation route. This speed made his meridians contract slightly. However, Mu Chen ignored it. The domineering Great Pagoda Art would be enough to control the violent spiritual energy. The violent spiritual energy that others might not be able to deal with was like a tamed sheep inside his body. All of you should just become part of my spiritual energy, Mu Chen muttered within his heart. Above the spiritual energy wheel, lights condensed and turned into an illusory light tower. This light tower swayed and absorbed the flooding spiritual energy like a whale. Then, with the empowerment of the massive amount of spiritual energy, the illusory light tower seemed to have turned slightly material. Buzz. The absorption speed of the light tower was extremely terrifying. In a matter of just a dozen minutes, the dense spiritual energy within Mu Chen's meridians was completely absorbed by it. Moreover, the illusory light tower seemed to have become more corporeal after absorbing this dense spiritual energy. This made Mu Chen exclaim loudly. If he wanted to turn the illusory light tower into a corporeal light tower, wouldn't the amount of spiritual energy he required be terrifying? Mu Chen smacked his lips in shock. He immediately concentrated, and the light tower slowly faded away into lights as it entered the spiritual energy wheel. As the lights entered his spiritual energy wheel, the light wheel shook violently. Waves of dense spiritual energy fluctuations emitted out constantly, and the size of the spiritual energy wheel expanded at a visible speed. In a matter of seconds, the spiritual energy wheel had expanded to the point where it was the size of an infant's fist. Around the light wheel, spiritual energy lights would emerge. It looked rather abstruse, as if it was enveloping the stars outside of the galaxy. A dense spiritual energy fluctuation emitted out from within Mu Chen's body. This sense of power made his pores open up. It was an indescribable and comforting feeling. Mu Chen sensed the spiritual energy wheel with a bit of joy. With its degree of strength, he had truly reached the spiritual rotation stage late phase. After suppressing his spiritual energy during this period of time, he had finally reached this level with the help of the Nine Truths, Blood Ginseng, and the Great Pagoda Art. As long as he advanced one more step, he would become a spirit stage powerhouse. That level would be a qualitative change to his cultivation. In the northern spiritual realm, a person at the spiritual rotation stage late phase was quite powerful. However, to tell the truth, there are many of them. If they wanted to truly become a leader of a force, they could only do it if they possessed the strength of a spirit stage powerhouse. This was because everybody knew that the capability of a spirit stage powerhouse was simply not something that a spiritual rotation stage late phase could compare with. No matter how many spiritual rotation stage late phase men you had, it was not as convincing as you, yourself, being a spirit stage powerhouse. They were two completely different levels. The prestige that they represent was also completely different. Muchen nodded in satisfaction when he felt the density of the spiritual energy within his body. Then he focused his consciousness on the Nine Netherworld Bird, which was trapped within the Oricea. Although he was completely focused on ingesting the spiritual energy previously, he did not ignore the actions that the Nine Netherworld Bird did. The Nine Netherworld Bird also noticed Muchen. However, it only glanced at him coldly before lying down lazily. "Damn feathery bird, you've already lost your influence and position right now. Can't you act sincerely?" Muchen said with a cold smile. "Go to hell." Hearing Muchen call it a damn feathery bird, the Nine Netherworld Bird bursted into a rage. The blazing wings fiercely flapped and a cold intent was conveyed over. "You wouldn't benefit if you were to kill me. Therefore, you should act more sincerely," Muchen said heartlessly. "With your spiritual rotation and stage late phase strength, you are worse than an ant in my eyes. You dare scold me?" Thoughts surged out from the Nine Netherworld Bird. Within it, a cold, murderous intent was conveyed out. "You think that it's your victory because you've trapped me within your body? This mandala flower isn't something that you can control." Hearing this, Muchen flew into a rage. His consciousness moved and actually floated toward the cage formed by the mandala flower. Then his consciousness slowly touched it. When it was touched, Muchen was exceptionally nervous. It was true that he didn't have a way of controlling the mysterious mandala flower, which had emerged from the black paper. But no matter what, this was the only thing that was capable of restraining the Nine Netherworld Bird. He must attempt it. Otherwise, the Nine Netherworld Bird would never listen to his words. As Muchen timidly touched the mandala flower, he was stunned. The rebound that he expected to come did not appear, and instead, his consciousness also integrated into the mandala flower a little bit. At that instant, Muchen felt that he could control the mandala flower a little bit. This feeling instantly made Muchen froze. Shortly after, a surge of ecstasy filled his mind. Afterwards, he stared unfavorably at the Nine Netherworld Bird. The Nine Netherworld Bird also detected something. It folded its black wings uneasily and was on alert. "Damn feathery bird, I'll make it so that you'll want to hurt me." Muchen snickered and moved his consciousness. The massive flower petals of the mandala flower actually spread out slowly and whacked fiercely at the Nine Netherworld Bird. Boom! The Nine Netherworld Bird, who was caught off guard, immediately issued a cry of pain when it was hit by the flower petals. The black flames on its body dimmed slightly. Then, a hint of fear finally emerged within its eyes. It was evident that it never expected that Muchen would be capable of activating this mysterious mandala flower. Seeing this, Muchen's heart was filled with delight. During this time, he had to endure the Nine Netherworld Bird's attitude and could not do anything to get back at it. Now he finally had a mean to counter back. He immediately activated the mandala flower in order to smack at the Nine Netherworld Bird endlessly. The Nine Netherworld Bird evaded it awkwardly. Every time it was hit by the mandala flower's petals, the black flames on its body would dim. This made it a bit frightened. The mandala flower was quite mysterious as it was actually capable of absorbing its energy. "Muchen, don't go overboard now. Believe it or not, I'll fight to the bitter end with you." After avoiding repeatedly, the Nine Netherworld Bird also entered a rampage and the feathers on its body stood up. Within the thought that was conveyed over, it was full of rage and horror. This is a punishment that you deserve. Since you're staying in my body, you should act more honestly. Otherwise, don't blame me for not holding back if you hold some ill desire towards me," Muchen said ruthlessly. He did not dare to push the Nine Netherworld Bird too hard. After all, the latter was not an ordinary existence. Even though it was weakened a lot, who knew if it had some sort of last resort or not? If he made the Nine Netherworld Bird feel anxious and it decided to fight him to the death, Muchen might not be able to endure it. Fury filled the Nine Netherbird's eyes. However, it stopped scorning and ridiculing Mu Chen. Instead, it shook the feathers on its body and slowly lay down. Now that Mu Chen was capable of controlling the mandala flower, it was best not to provoke this person. Noticing that the Nine Netherbird finally caved in, Mu Chen let out a sigh of relief. Then his consciousness exited the mandala flower. But once he exited it, he felt a sense of dizziness. A feeling of fatigue emitted out and made him drowsy. So controlling the mandala flower actually consumes this much mental energy. Mu Chen was shocked and forcibly suppressed the stress that he felt. The mandala flower was indeed strange. He had activated it inaccurately, yet it nearly made him fall asleep. Then wouldn't he faint if he attempted to use it to do something? It seems that I shouldn't use it often, Mu Chen muttered to himself. Then his consciousness exited his body. Although the consumption was great, he still obtained a measure that the Nine Netherbird was afraid of. This damn feathery bird. Just wait until I advance to the spirit stage. I'll deal with you then. After Mu Chen successfully advanced to the spiritual rotation stage late phase, he gradually slowed down his cultivation pace. This breakthrough was different compared to the times when he would slowly yet steadily advance, and instead was a sudden leap. Although Mu Chen was thoroughly prepared for this rapid breakthrough, no matter what, it still made his spiritual energy a little bit sparse. Thus, he must quietly temper his spiritual energy. Otherwise, this sparseness would be trouble for him when he attempts to break through to a higher stage. Mu Chen selected a decent idea to temper his spiritual energy. The plan was to condense spiritual seals. Before his breakthrough, Mu Chen could only condense 19 spiritual seals. On the day that Yang Gui was killed, he only managed to arrange the 9 heavenly lightning spiritual array due to the jaded essence fruit. Otherwise, he would not have reached that level. But since his strength had increased significantly, Mu Chen could easily condense 20 spiritual seals. He no longer required any external help to do so. This made Mu Chen quite delightful, as it also means that he could successfully arrange the 9 heavenly lightning spiritual array with his own strength. With this powerful spiritual array, he would be able to fight even a spirit stage initial phase powerhouse. However, a great obstacle emerged when Mu Chen attempted to condense the 21st seal after condensing 20 spiritual seals. It was difficult to form the 21st spiritual seal. This phenomenon puzzled him. With the increase of his strength, it should be easy for him to condense over 20 spiritual seals. Why did he keep failing? After thinking for a while without any conclusion gathered, Mu Chen, who was in confusion, could only head over to find Wenling. Then after the explanation given by Wenling, he finally understood that the 21st spiritual seal was the critical point for a rank 1 spiritual array master to break through to a rank 2 spiritual array master. Although 20 spiritual seals and 21 spiritual seals only differ from one seal, it separated the two levels. Wenling spent numerous years before he finally completed this difference of one seal and became a rank 2 spiritual array master. It was evident that it wasn't as simple as Mu Chen thought if he wanted to cover the gap in a short period of time, even if he had a monstrous talent. After he heard Wenling's explanation, Mu Chen was enlightened. No wonder it was so difficult to condense the 21st spiritual seal. This was due to it actually representing the difference between the two levels. As long as he successfully condensed the 21st spiritual seal, he would be considered to be a rank 2 spiritual array master. Moreover, he would condense numerous spiritual seals at an alarming speed. For example, Wenling could only condense 20 spiritual seals before he became a rank 2 spiritual array master. But after he finally stepped past the 21st seal, he managed to condense 29 spiritual seals within half a month. Furthermore, the number of seals was still growing slowly. Thus, this was the difference between a rank 2 spiritual array master and a rank 1 spiritual array master. After identifying the cause, Mu Chen slowed down the speed of condensing spiritual seals. Although it would still be a compulsory lesson every day, he split up the time so he could complete other matters. As Mu Chen relaxed, a dozen days or so passed by. During this period, Mu Chen would split up his time into 4 parts. One part was for condensing spiritual seals, another part for cultivating spiritual energy, another part for researching on the complex and mysterious butchering demonic lotus spiritual array, and the last part was for talking with the Nine Netherworld within his body. The Nine Netherworld was an extremely powerful existence and was currently within Mu Chen's body. Although it was trapped, Mu Chen was quite tempted towards its strength. Therefore, he did not want their relationship to be filled completely with hatred. However, the Nine Netherworld Bird ignored his actions for a conversation. The viciousness within its eyes did not fade at all. Instead, the gaze that would occasionally look at Mu Chen was like how it would view a naive fool. This foolish person actually believes that he could make it obedient just like this? Although there were minimal effects of the talk, Mu Chen did not get bored of it. Instead, the Nine Netherworld Bird was the one that felt it was annoying. Once it heard his voice, it would cover the cage with its wings and would not listen nor talk. Even though Mu Chen did not obtain much significant results from the exchange he had with the Nine Netherworld Bird, he still made a discovery regarding about the butchering demonic lotus spiritual array. However, this discovery made him get a headache. This is because he discovered that the butchering demonic lotus spiritual array that he saw within the Black Scroll wasn't complete. Accurately speaking, it should only be a part of the complete butchering demonic lotus spiritual array. The most peculiar thing about it is that this part was still a perfect spiritual array. It could be arranged and activated by itself. Mu Chen was quite surprised to see that. It was his first time seeing a diagram array with such a perfect spiritual array after dissecting it out from the complete version. As for the remaining parts of the butchering demonic lotus spiritual array, it was still hidden within the Black Scroll. It was impossible to detect even when Mu Chen activated his heart array state. This was obviously because he wasn't strong enough to see it. However, Mu Chen did not feel dispirited. Right now, his strength wasn't enough. Not to mention the complete version of the butchering demonic lotus spiritual array. The part of the diagram array he could see required approximately 100 spiritual seals. Mu Chen still had a long way to go before he reached this number. Perhaps only an excellent rank 3 spiritual array master would barely reach this requirement. After all, he had only just begun on the path of a spiritual array master. While Mu Chen was quietly cultivating, the Mu territory was relatively quiet. Even the entire northern spiritual realm was somewhat quiet. This silence made Mu Feng feel a little bit uncomfortable. Did the Liu territory cause any commotions? Within the Mu estate, Mu Feng held a teacup and frowned as he asked Zhou Yi. Zhou Ye shook his head and said, "It was as if those bastards had changed their personalities. They became completely quiet and peaceful. Moreover, they didn't even care about their underworld forces, which we helped the 9 Dragon City conquered." After hearing Zhou Ye say this, Mu Feng frowned even more. He understood Lu Qingtian's personality. The latter was cunning and crafty. He was definitely not a good person. How is it possible that he would let it go after they suffered such a loss against the Mu territory? Send down an order. They should keep a close surveillance towards the Liu territory. If the Liu territory causes any commotion, they should immediately report it back. Mu Feng placed down the teacup and said in a deep voice, "Okay." Zhou Ye nodded his head and immediately turned away. Mu Feng stared at Zhou Ye's silhouette as his hands grinded against the armrest of his chair. His eyes turned toward the direction of the Liu territory. Somehow, anxiety had filled his heart. This feeling was like how a bloody storm would sweep over soon. Ominous and terrifying. Liu territory. Recently, the Liu territory had remained rather calm. However, everybody could feel it vaguely that the patrols within the Liu city had become a lot stricter. It was as if they were preparing something. This made many individuals a bit puzzled. Thinking about some time ago, the Liu territory had confronted the Mu territory. Could the Liu territory be preparing to defend against the Mu territory? But the Liu territory should be the strongest force within the northern spiritual realm. They had always bragged about it gloriously. Why would they suddenly be afraid of the Mu territory? Many were puzzled. Thus, rumors spread out about how the Liu territory was afraid of the Mu territory. They did not dare to fight against them, and etc. This harmed the reputation of the Liu territory. Goshou, Liu estate. Boom. In the meeting room, a table was completely smashed into pieces by a paled-faced Liu Ming. His face darkened as he said, "Those idiots think we, the Liu territory, would actually be afraid of the Mu territory?" At the seat of honor, Liu Qingtian glanced at him and said, "It's only just rumors. Why do you care about it?" "What Big Brother said is correct." Liu Zong nodded his head and continued, "Right now, the most important thing is to wait for the old man to exit his secluded training. We should not care about anything else. As long as the old man advances to the 3 heavens stage, the rumors would all fade away." Liu Ming gritted his teeth and said, "But how long do we have to wait?" During this period of time, the Mu territory and the 9 Dragon City had conquered many forces that belonged to us. Those as wholes, They actually dare to bully our Liu territory. How bold! This Mu Feng is definitely seeking his death, Liu Zong said in a cold voice. Liu Qingtian smiled. However, this smile was extremely cold. He said, "Be patient. There will be a time when he would have to pay for it all. When that happens, I will make him beg in front of us." The Mu territory is only an upstart force. They actually dare to compare background and history with my Liu territory? They're biting off more than they can chew. Liu Qingtian stood up and waved his hand. "Just do what you have to do. We'll continue to wait." His voice faded away and he was about to leave. However, his face suddenly changed and he lifted his head up. The bright sky above the Liu territory had actually suddenly become darker. Buzz. Fierce winds blew in the sky. Everybody in the Liu territory could feel it. At this moment, the spiritual aura within the world seemed to fluctuate violently. Moreover, the spiritual aura flowed with the winds and rushed quickly in one direction. A few people looked in that direction and noticed that location was the mountain behind the Liu estate. "What's happening?" Liu Ming hurriedly walked out. He stared at the changing weather and could not help but ask. Liu Qingtian only stared at the sky. Then he took a deep breath. His gaze turned towards the mountain and he could see that winds were fiercely blowing in the sky. Clouds gathered as an amazing spiritual energy pressure emitted out in waves. "Dad is about to exit." A smile emerged on Liu Qingtian's face. However, the smile looked extraordinarily ferocious and cold within the dark skies. Hearing this, Liu Zong and Liu Ming also revealed delightful expressions. Liu Ming immediately sent out news. "We, the Liu territory, will host a 9-territory meeting. Every single force within the northern spiritual realm must be present. Otherwise, we'll eradicate them," Liu Qingtian said with a faint smile. "Yes," Liu Ming smiled as he replied. Facing the fierce winds, Liu Qingtian slowly opened his arms. From this point on, the Liu territory is the overlord of the northern spiritual realm. Mu Feng, just wait for your death. That wraps up the content for today's episode. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe to the channel to get notifications for the next episode. For now, goodbye, and see you next time.